Welcome to the Whiskey, Jazz, and Leadership Podcast. Subscribe now so you don't miss a drop of straight talk you can't get anywhere else. We discuss the whiskeys to drink, music to listen to, and what it really takes to be an effective leader. I'm your host, Galen Bingham, the leadership strategist. Tonight's guest, sales management professional, Bo Stevens. Hey, what you drinking? I'm sure that the memories of doing this with your family, that gets tied into things. I see just a whole lot of connections to basketball, which you and I came up with. That's the foundation of everything. You know, I am fond of saying that I played just enough in college to be able to tell lies today, right?
Yeah.
So,
Galen, you were a tough, let's talk about basketball. You were a tough, for people that listen to you, and you are so professional and so well-spoken. You were a tough, I'm going to describe you. Here's how I remember you. Tough, gritty, physical basketball player. You were gritty, man. You boxed out. You would do the dirty work. You were grabbing rebounds. You were a defender. You had a nice mid-range game. You were tough.
okay, so now that you got me cheesing here, I'm gonna talk a little bit about your game, because I think in those early years, we probably, as you were saying, we hit every open gym. If there was an open window in a gym, we didn't have cell phones back then, but if we did, boy, game over. Because, yeah, I tried to hold down the paint, but anything outside around that arc, you were just almost automatic, man. And you would leave that hand up there. I have got a little mentee that I talk to from time to time, and we've connected over basketball. And I've sent you some pictures and some video.
Yes.
And one of the things I tell him is you got to follow through, and you got to leave it up there for the photo finish, right? Because, you know, the girls might be slow with the photo. You got to give them an opportunity to take a picture.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. People can pick up on it. You're a humble, tough guy. I might have had a little more flash. I might have been floating out there launching bombs. And unfortunately for my basketball career, we're so old, there was not a 3-point line.
Oh my gosh, I think about that.
Maybe that's a blessing, because I would have not crossed that line.
There is no need. We're 3 out here. What are we doing? You know,
Sure.
I'll tell you, one of the, we've connected on basketball stories. And, you know, one of the stories literally that I talked to someone today about, you know, you and I also connected over our dads and how important our dads were in the foundation of our lives and understanding life. And one of the things that my dad said to me specifically about basketball is, he said, you know, Galen, you look across the court, you look into the eyes of the player that you guard, and you know in your heart of hearts whether or not they're better than you. And if you decide that they're better than you, you've got 2 choices to make. You can either play straight up basketball, and you've already determined they're going to beat you if you play straight up basketball, or you can find some other way to win. But you got to make that choice. And that has become such a mantra for me, that there is a way to beat anyone. But sometimes you can't beat them playing straight up basketball. You've got to find other things, right? What are some sports stories, some sports analogies that seem to have become part of who you are, and they come out pretty frequently, either with your kids or at work?
Well, that's a humbling statement, because that makes me think that when we played one-on-one over the church gym, when you looked across at me, I'm pretty sure you thought, I got this guy.
No, but what I did determine, I looked into your eyes, and I decided, okay, I can't guard this guy outside the paint. That's just not going to happen. happen. I got to find some other way. I got to somehow, because there is no stopping this jump shot from as far out as he shoots. What are some stories or some phrases or some analogies that seem to have stuck with you?
I enjoy listening to coaches, and then there's a business coaching crossover. One of the best I heard, of course, a lot of people probably heard, is Lou Holtz. And one of the things that stuck with me, and I utilize this specifically in evaluating other people. I've been in positions to hire people, and I struggle with that a little bit because I like people. I don't have a critical, I've been blessed, I've considered that a blessing, not to look at people critically. It's like I can find something to like about a lot of people. Now, does that mean we should hire them? Maybe not, right? So I had to really work at that. And one of the things Lou Holtz, he made an evaluation, I guess, in recruiting, and he had three things. It was simple, like we talked about earlier. He said, "Do they care? Are they committed? And can I trust them?" And so that was something pretty simple. I could, when making decisions, that would pop up, and I would think, okay, let me look through these qualifications and what I thought about them personally, and am I asking these questions to uncover that? And that was a big thing for me that I could apply. And it's very simple. It's intuitive. But until you articulate it, sometimes we lose sight of that. We're looking at past performances and different things, and they have to fit in this, but then maybe somebody else in that group of candidates sticks out and they're like, wow, they got a little something extra that I like. Is it one of these three qualities, or do they have all three of these qualities? And that's what I'm drawn to. It's not really a sports analogy, but that's Lou Holtz. He was the ultimate underdog and achieved his goals, set goals and achieved them.
Man, I tell you, I mean, that I love the way that simplifies the process. And I think it ties into what you said earlier about coaching, specifically coaching young kids. It's really about, can you simplify, can you break down what you're trying to do into chunks to where they can understand and execute what you're trying to do. And I've seen so many coaches, particularly for young kids. They're coaching maybe 12, 13-year olds, and they're just so sophisticated. God bless them, but they're trying to get people to run the fast break. And I'm like, well, if you didn't break this down in practice, it's too late to introduce it in the game. Now is not the time.
Yeah, there's a lot of correlations to business. Communicating concepts and creating a culture and team, and it's hard. That's hard. It's hard with your personalities. I mean, one of the things is, if I put my list down of leadership and the best leaders, and I'll be honest, I like being around bright people and stealing their ideas. I mean, I'm not going to say I've had an original thought. I love stealing things from other people and mixing that in my pot. But the best leaders I've worked for, now that I'm older, they were very, very good listeners. And many times we think leaders are supposed to talk. The great leaders that are authentic and comfortable with themselves listen to people around them. They assess the culture, the mood, the attitude, then they do their thing, right? Which is what maybe you're gifted at, or you've worked at, you've honed your skills, but you have to be in touch with those people around you. And I mean, that's one of the things I learned. I used to think leaders had a great message, and I'm like, wow, some of the best, most effective people I've worked for listened a lot. And I had a couple of times they would ask me a question and I would answer, and I almost was a little intimidated by how astutely they were listening. I've learned from that.
Let's talk a little bit about mentors, because I've got this concept that I stole from Napoleon Hill, and he talked about his invisible board of directors. And these are people either living or dead that you think about when you have to make a tough decision, or you have to be creative, or whatever the case is. And I relate that back to sports very easily, because there are things that Galen Bingham just can't do, right? Galen Bingham is just not capable of doing this thing. But if I take on the persona of Julius Erving, well, Julius Erving can do almost anything he wanted to, right?
Yeah.
And so it's that support, it's that mental imaging that you get from thinking about mentors and people that have done it at a high level, who are some of the mentors that you think about from a career or for a bit from a business standpoint or just from a life standpoint?
Yeah. Early on in my sales days, I worked under some gentlemen that were fantastic. And what they did, I guess I couldn't ask other people to do. And what we've talked about is they genuinely cared about me and my success. And even now, unless I'm naive, you can't fake that. They cared about, they would call and check on me. I didn't feel like it was, hey, who'd you call on? Where'd you go today? It wasn't that. Hey, Bo, how you doing? What's going on? It was a personal way that they could communicate. And I was spoiled because the first 7 or 8 years of my career, I thought that's just how it was, right? I think that's how it is. That's who you work with, people like that. And then later on, I realized, wow, not everybody really cares about me that deeply or is invested in me like these guys. And then I had to mature and grow up and say, oh, okay. And so I would pick and choose, but I had some mentors that were interested in me. A guy named Bill Easley out of Oklahoma I just felt like he took me under his wing, It would allow me to fail a little bit. We had some circumstances where I'd make a mistake and I would think, oh my God, I'm going to get fired. I can't believe I did that. And he would just kind of laugh and go, yeah, you really screwed that up, didn't you? And I was like, oh no, and then so he made it okay by saying things like that and laughing at me, with me, then we would move forward. And so that was great mentorship. And I developed, into my work persona. And I exhibit that to this day. I don't know. That's just what I learned, how to treat people that we work with or you're responsible for. We need each other. And I had to mature to go, I need these people to succeed at work. So I'm invested in them. I'm trying to give them all I can. I pray for them to help me along with that. I mean, that's next level stuff. And I think it's important, but I don't know how you coach somebody to do that. You exhibit it just like you exhibit leadership in your life, Galen. You just do it. There's leaderships in all areas of life.
Yeah.
But sorry, I went kind of sideways there. But you ask about mentors. When you say that, that's who I think about.
And I love the way you're bringing in this element of team and how crazy it would be to feel like, well, I'm the star of the basketball team. Just give me the ball and get out of the way. Well, yeah, you might get a few great plays, but you need four other dudes. There is no way, even if even thinking about Michael Jordan in his early days, where his first few years in the league, he was trying to be the superhero, right? He was the star and he was trying to do everything himself. And he won a few games, he won a few scoring titles, but he never won a championship. It wasn't until there was not only a team around him, but he started to trust the team around him, that they started to become the dynasty that we all talk about with a lot of fish story like tales now.
That's exactly right. Yeah, but nobody talks about how many points Jordan averaged. There's no doubt. You and I are Jordan era guys that we grew up in. That was, and there's no doubt he could have put up more numbers. I mean, when you think about it, right, it just kind of hit me like he could have, quote, had more individual success maybe, but not now because he, to some degree, was hard on his teammates because he knew he had to have them. And that's what's chronicled in the documentaries. But that's what he was trying to do, right? Whatever his motivation was, he was pushing his his teammates, not just, I'm trying to get my 40. He was pushing his teammates. And that's an interesting analogy for sure.
That's interesting. I mean, you bring in an element that I don't know that I've ever talked about, and that is this willingness to play a team sport. And I'm talking about relative to work, but this willingness to play a team sport. But then in that, there's this love to push your teammates to be better, to be stronger, to make the sales calls or to, be on time. And that might be analogous, maybe not to the same degree of how tough Jordan was on his teammates, but how do you mix that combination between loving and needing your team, but yet challenging them to be better than maybe they even know that they can be?
I mean, that's a difficult one, right? I mean, how do you hold, the corporate world, we hold you accountable and we talk about accountability, but really fleshing that out and playing that takes some people skills, you know,
Mm.
because, accountability, the concept of accountability works both ways. We're going to hold each other accountable. So corporate America says we're going to hold our employees accountable. We're going to, a director of sales comes in, we're about accountability. And so what he's saying, and I've been in this situation, what he's saying is we want you to deliver. We're going to hold you accountable to your job. And then when there are back orders and mistakes are made, I want to hold my hand up and go, hey, can we start that accountability now? Because that works. I'm holding you accountable. I got you your orders. Now you deliver, right? That's probably that could be a career altering conversation if you don't handle it appropriately going up the ladder. But that's where sometimes I become cynical, like, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
What he's talking about is holding me accountable. We're going to go through this and I'm going to watch very closely to these leaders and folks you have on your show that do it really well, right? The troops are, this is a different perspective. This is somebody looking up the ladder going, that accountability works both ways. You need to deliver too. And if you don't, then you lose credibility. People spend millions and to get that credibility to build that team. And so to those leaders out there listening, take a deep breath and think about that, because I do. I'm like, well, I got to be careful with this accountability word, because if I'm going to throw this out there, I better be open to someone calling me out. I
I
better be
love
humble
that.
enough to take that. Hey,
I,
Bo, this works both ways.
I love that. I love that. And I think you're right. I think a lot of times, particularly young leaders, they only see accountability as a one-way conversation. And one of my mentors, Mr. Joe Cavalier, one of the first conversations, one of the earliest conversations I remember him having with me when we were both at Kraft. It's like I was getting ready to go into this big meeting with some senior executives from Kraft, more senior than obviously than me, and more senior than him. And so he was giving me some advice of how to handle different situations. But then at the end, right before we left, he said, and don't forget for a moment that you're being evaluated. Don't forget for a moment. Don't get lulled into thinking that this is about something other than you being evaluated. And that has always stuck with me. And back to your point, that really cemented for me that this guy really does care about me. He cares about my success. And that created the space for him to give me some tough feedback when he needed to, for him to come down on me hard when he needed to, when the situation warranted it, because he created that space. And so I think you're absolutely right, man, that leaders need to recognize that accountability goes both ways. And that doesn't mean that you have to be perfect, but that
No,
does mean that you have to own your stuff. You have to
no, and
own your
I
stuff.
I had to learn through some mistakes and errors in the management roles of building honest relationships. And while I'm strong on being authentic, and I feel very strongly like be who you're going to be. Please don't fake it, right? But while I'm thinking about being authentic, I need to build that relationship so that I can have a difficult conversation if need be, and we can survive that difficult conversation. It usually takes a couple days to get over on either part, one party or the other, if it's an uncomfortable conversation. But can we survive that without, creating attitudes and issues? But and that's where that comes in. If you build those authentic relationships, then you can have that difficult conversation. And I'll be very honest, early on in my career, sometimes I shied away from those difficult conversations because you could tell by talking to me, man, I'd really rather just hang out and have fun. I'd really rather just talk, and let's have fun. Let's get after this. Let's have, we got to be here. Let's enjoy each other. But it was hard for me to grow up into that hey, we need to have a conversation and we got to talk about some things we need to improve. And it's A, B, C, and D. And that has been hard for me to develop. I have to dig a little deeper to do that, and some of your really good leaders you have on the show, it's almost intuitive for them. So we all have strengths and weaknesses.
I love it. I love it. Well, hey man, now that I got you on this podcast, it's my opportunity to validate some of the fish tales that I've been telling about basketball in the era that we came up in. So I'm going to share
Okay.
some names. I'm going to reference some names that people may know, they may have heard of, and I want to get your reaction because they are people that we have played with and played against. All right.
Okay.
So one name I'm going to toss out is Mr. Stacey King.
You remember him too?
Oh my gosh, that was a nightmare. Stacey King.
Well, the first thing that needs to come out is so Stacey King, it was 6'10, I think, listed, super tall, could run, very athletic, and jump. I would tell Stacey if he was standing in front of me respectfully, he was not very, very good in high school. However, I did get past him and late and went for a little layup, and I think he sent it somewhere off the scoreboard or the back wall or the ball. And when he blocked it, he may have deflated the ball.
I think they're still looking for that ball, man. I think they're still looking for it.
Still looking for it, Gary. But so Stacey King he put us out of the tournament. He ended it for us. And then I remember just thinking, man, he's tall, but he didn't impress me. And then 1 year later, he was at the University of Oklahoma and was amazing. Like the transformation was, I tell that story because I'm like, wow, they took somebody raw, gave him some moves, and was a great college player and really good on the Bulls.
And now he's forever a national NBA championship. He's got rings, dude.
The rings, man. What we got, Galen?
We got stories. We got stories. Yeah, but you sucked in high school. You sucked in high school.
I can't believe you brought up Stacey King. Okay, that's all.
All right, so I got another name to drop on you, man. I don't. We didn't play this guy a whole lot, but Brent Price.
Oh my goodness. So Brent Price. So there was Mark Price that was the NBA perennial all-star that was amazing. I played pickup ball with him at Oklahoma State one summer. He showed up at the gym and I was like, oh, okay. That's why he's Mark Price.
This is the difference.
Yeah, I was like, okay, yeah. I couldn't have. Okay, I got it. Yeah, his shot was amazing.
His little brother, Brent Price, I think ultimately he went to OU. And then he had a career in the NBA. I think he played for the Bulls for a little bit. Obviously not as storied as
he was good.
Not as storied as Mark Price, but he's on my wall. I got stories.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that. I hadn't thought about him, but yes, he was good, really good.
And then I don't know if you remember, we played against Spencer Tillman, who was a football player. Ultimately playing for the Oklahoma Sooners. And then he went on and he played great career, I believe, with the Denver Broncos, but I'm not really sure.
Do you remember where he played high school ball?
He was at Enid. It was he and Brent Price together. That's why it was just a nightmare. It was just a nightmare. Yeah. And then one last, this name is probably not as famous to anyone outside of our little crew. But we were talking about Steve Kennedy.
Absolutely. Steve Kennedy was a sharpshooter, and we had to play twice a year, however many times. Then we would meet him in a tournament. Steve Kennedy was good. And did you play with Steve Kennedy in college?
I ended up playing with Steve Kennedy in college, but and he was just amazing. But we talked about his game reminded me of this kid that I used to play ball with, pick up all the time, Bo Stevens.
Yeah.
His game reminded me.
A little better. Except he was a little better, a little taller, a little more athletic. But I appreciate that, Galen. You're too nice. There also remember Chew Kennedy?
Chew Kennedy.
He went to OU. We played them in Tulsa, I think. Didn't we play him?
Yeah, we sure did.
Yeah, he was tough. Did.
Well, man, I'll tell you, this has been an incredible trip down memory lane. I just really appreciate not only what our relationship has become, but I appreciate the foundation that our relationship sits on. It's one of those things where you honored me by saying that I haven't changed, but you have not changed one bit. I mean, just the personality, the love for people, the willingness to take on almost any challenge that's in front of you, and still maintaining the great personality. I just really appreciate you being one of those dudes that I can pick up the phone and call when things are getting crazy. So I
Anytime.
appreciate
And
you,
you
man.
as well, you, Galen. Yeah, you've been great for me. I know I can pick up the phone and call you. And so my resume says, I'm top of the class in the School of Hard Knocks. That's what my resume says.
Well, that works, man. Well, hey, man, if you've got a few more minutes, I'd love to pull you into the VIP room. So let's cheers for this conversation. This is all I'm willing to share with folks for free, because I mean, this is pretty good for free, but we need to pull a little something extra special for my VIP. So man,
Absolutely.
cheers. I appreciate it. Keep shooting, man.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Galen.
Cheers. Hey, it's not too late. Hit that subscribe button so you're sure to catch the next episode. If you're really enjoying the vibe, leave us a review or become a VIP for guest and show exclusives. Cheers.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.